We're live. Welcome to episode 35 of Terricolas podcast. Greg, our normal introductory, is out for the podcast. But today I want to welcome Jordan. Jordan, what's your last name?
I go by Jordan Lyndsey.
We go by Jordan Lyndsey here.
That's how the internet knows me.
Yeah, we'll go by the @, the handles. And Jessica?
Hi.
Hey.
I was like, I go by Jessica.
Jess or Jessica, we'll mix it up today. And we're, of course, accompanied by Oscar.
On the sad.
Over there.
On the sad lounge. Definitely. So I was the one that brought Jordan Lyndsey on the podcast, on the Terricolas podcast. She was recommended by Athleisure, Chris Gonzalez, to help us out when we were doing the graphic design. We were trying out new features, and he pointed me in her direction. So yeah, this is pretty much how it started. How did you start doing graphic design and because this is what is that called? Like building portfolios or like?
Yeah, so first let me say I would not consider myself an artist by any stretch of the word. Maybe
exactly what an
a
artist
creative.
Okay.
Because there's still so much that I think I need to learn in that design space.
Okay.
So it's something I'm constantly, taking courses and looking into. But I actually started in my everyday job. I work in nonprofits, and in the nonprofit sector, you tend to wear a lot of hats. So although my
makes sense.
Yeah, small budget, small group, big impact, right? So my title is one thing, but it's those other duties as assigned that really get you. And one of the things that I just started playing around with, I guess about 2 years ago, was social design. And so I prefer to stick with corporate marketing materials, brochures, business cards, anything you need for events. But I really like playing around with logos too, because I think someone's brand is so important to helping tell their story. So that's
recognition is a key aspect of marketing. Whatever you want to tell, whatever you want to sell, whatever you want to.
Absolutely, yeah. And I started before I got into nonprofits. I was actually a journalist. So I worked for the USA Today network for a little while. Journalism is one of my big to-dos in the Army as well.
So you're military.
Yes.
Ex-military. Okay.
I'm in the military. I'm in the Army Reserve. I'm a public affairs officer currently. And one of the big parts of that is helping to tell the Army's story. So I always tell people, as my little side hustle, I'm a digital marketing storyteller. However, I can help you tell your story for your brand, like this podcast, for your business, for your nonprofit,
No, that's awesome.
It's a little side hustle. It's fun.
Yeah. No, I can definitely really. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I said that's like the greatest thing though. Like you're already public relations. You can just you're just transforming it visually.
It's helped. Sometimes I have to stop myself because my side hustle, something I really am passionate about, something I really enjoy doing, is a lot like work.
Right.
So I'm constantly working. So sometimes I do have to stop myself and step away from the computer.
Right.
That's definitely I don't want to say it's a problem because I see it as a positive, characteristic quality, but with a lot of high output people that I've met, they kind of all share the same strife that they need some way of cutting off how many things they're touching at one time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It is a struggle.
Yeah, I bet. You mentioned a nonprofit. Can we talk a little bit about what the nonprofits that you've worked for in the past are, maybe some current ones, and what your interests are?
Sure.
In that?
So I'm a huge animal lover. I mean, you go
see your pup over there.
to my social media. I have my little French bulldog, Howlin' Harvey. Fun fact: Howlin' Harvey came by his name because he sings.
Oh yeah.
So he comes by it on Honestly, he loves to sing. So I have Hal and Harvey. I also have 2 Siamese cats that I rescued about 10 years ago.
Are they the bald ones?
No. Those are Sphinx cats.
Oh, okay.
And then I have 5 sugar gliders as well.
Oh, no way.
They're the cutest things ever.
Okay, so with sugar gliders, I know that they're kind of difficult to bond with you. So how well are they bonded to you?
I've had my 3 adult sugar gliders for about 2 years, and it took about 2 years for them to bond to me. And then 2 of them mated before I got my male neutered.
Oh, okay.
So that's how I ended up with babies. So I have 5
And they
sugar
had
gliders.
2 only? I don't know
They
what
have
their normal
twins.
litters are like.
They have twins.
Oh, okay.
So I
And
have.
just really quickly bonding, and I think it's not just particularly it's not just particular to mammals, but in the animal kingdom, right? It's when 2 different they don't have to be within. They're usually within the same species, but don't have to be like a special connection that you grow with, like trust, right?
Right. It's a lot about trust with the exotic animals. So the adult sugar gliders that I had, they were actually rescues. They were older when I got them, so they did not have that imperative bonding period. They were very timid. They were very scared. I mean, obviously, they were very scared. So it took. You good?
Yeah. That water, man.
So it took about 2 years of getting them to trust me, and they're a lot of fun. Of course, most of the time when they're awake, I'm asleep.
Yeah.
So they're very independent little creatures, but when they do come out, they all have a personality. They're very smart. They know their names. So that was a little tangent. I'm an animal lover.
Okay,
I love animals. I have always, as long as I can remember, by the time I could make my own decisions, even if they were bad decisions, I was like bringing home pets.
Right.
And then my mom would be like, where did this cat come from?
Definitely.
So I always loved animals. And so when I decided to leave journalism, at the time I was working at a TV station, and every Tuesday, the Humane Society where I worked would bring in a pet for Pet Tuesday and try to get this pet adopted on TV. And that was my favorite day of work. So I actually left the TV station and went and worked for that Humane Society.
Oh, yeah.
And that was my first nonprofit experience.
Okay.
Which I fell in love with that.
And this wasn't here in El Paso?
No, this was in Georgia.
Okay, yeah.
And
you guys have, I would imagine, because it's so close to Florida, there's a bit more of an exotic pet rescue issue?
In Florida, there are a lot of exotics.
Yeah.
Where I was at in Georgia, the Humane Society that I worked at, we actually didn't deal with exotics.
Okay.
We dealt with like a very limited, it was mostly dogs, cats. We had bunnies, we had hamsters, we had rats at one point in time. But it was more, your household pets. Georgia has very different laws concerning exotic pets.
Wow.
And ownership of exotic pets.
Is it more lenient or more
Strict.
Okay.
Which I think it should be.
Right, yeah.
I think it should be.
It's a big problem.
Sugar gliders are not for everybody.
Right.
Yeah,
They're not a
common.
first-time pet. They're not for kids.
Definitely. They're
and
small and
They're
fragile.
small,
And they could be a
they're
little
fragile.
I guess as, any little creature that's agitated, it could be a little, they bite back.
They do bite.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're not tame, they bite, and they have to have a specific diet. And most exotics do. They're a lot more work. So so I worked there. I loved it. That's where I kind of got my start in nonprofits, and I kind of realized at that point that that's the career path that I want to take outside of the military.
Right.
So very fortunate to be working for a community foundation here now. It's actually in Las Cruces, the Community Foundation of Southern New Mexico. And we manage a variety of nonprofits and their endowment funds.
So kind of help work out their finances, something like that?
So we're a grant-making organization.
Okay.
A community foundation is very difficult to explain.
Okay.
Because we're an umbrella organization. We do scholarships for students. We do grants for nonprofits. Most recently, our organization did COVID response funding to the community. So we granted out $425,000 to families in Las Cruces who were impacted by social distancing order and people like they're losing their jobs, things like that.
Well, that's always amazing to hear.
Yeah. Oh, there's our website.
Yeah.
So those graphics, like the graphic that's scrolling. So I do stuff like that. I make the graphics.
Oh, nice.
So this is your page. You made this, or you helped?
I did not build the page.
Okay.
I'm not a website designer. That takes a lot of code and a lot of math, and I am not a numbers person.
Right.
But like those little graphics, anything you see on our social media, I make.
Aesthetically too, because I know that it's like not, you don't necessarily have to be like a back-end programmer to create a web page these days, right? You can kind of like
anybody could
the
create
aesthetics of it,
a Squarespace template for a website,
right,
you know. So that's what I did with my own
Well,
website.
although I've done it before, and it's not. You think it's gonna be easy, but then there's so many little hiccups you run into. Like, oh, I wanted to be able to do this, and the interface isn't exactly intuitive to applying this. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we work with website designers and a corporate office like who helps us with our back end operations there, and like I said, they're so much more well versed in that than I ever will be.
Well, like you said, you need to be good at many things, not necessarily an expert at one, right?
I wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, no, I totally can even relate a little bit to that. I've recently tried to learn a little bit of graphic design and video editing and whatnot, and
Video editing is tough.
Yeah, and I've had the same issue where like I'll start to get decent at this thing where like, you know, I'm starting to learn the basics.
If you take 2 or 3 weeks off though, you come back to it and you're like, oh,
it's another language again.
How do I do this?
And then you just get into, like, I was doing mostly video editing, and then I don't even know how I became interested in I'm using After Effects, so like special effects.
Yeah.
And it's just a whole, like, it's the same controls, but it's a whole different application. And
see, that's way more advanced than what I do.
I'm like rudimentary.
It takes me maybe like a week of really looking at something like that to get it down pat. I think once I get it, I'm good. I've been doing like video editing in Premiere lately.
That's what I use.
That's pretty standard, I think. So I'm good with the video editing, and now I want to learn the ins and outs of Illustrator. Instead of just the basics that I know now. So
what's that illustration?
It's part of Adobe Creative Suite. So it's just another program that you can create graphics on.
Yeah, there's many applications. I think there's 50 applications on the Creative Cloud.
There's so much that you can learn.
It's like
you can spend hours editing something because there's so many other options.
Well, they're all like in the graphic design space, right? But Premiere Pro is for editing video, and After Effects is for special effects. And Illustrator, what would you say Illustrator's?
I think Illustrator's more for creating graphic design. So I can manipulate graphics. I can add my own drawings in there easier than I could using Photoshop and manipulating something and making
So even for like a logo, right? So like drafting a logo through a sketch, maybe putting it on Illustrator, I think is a little more, it has better tools to make it into an actual graphic art. Graphic file.
A graphic file, and
a graphic file? Wow. So is it like bloody, gory?
There we go.
Graphic, like what are we talking about here?
We stay away
whatever
from
your
that.
your imagination can conceive.
So, man, I lost my question for being a dummy. I had a really good question. Jesus.
If you come back to it, I'm not going anywhere.
Okay. Man, that stinks.
No, I just saw your. Is it a Harley? You have a.
It is a Harley.
All right.
So
I've been wanting to ask about this.
Yeah, that seems
there
to be.
It is.
That's the question on everyone's mind recently.
I have one myself actually, but I want to hear about yours.
So I I ride a 2018 Softail Slim.
All right.
Particularly that, so the video you're pulling up right now, Oscar, that is the first 5 minutes that I had that bike.
Really?
That's the first time I ever turned it on.
Really?
Like, I was so freaking excited.
Really?
Yes.
Looking natural. You've ridden before that?
And fun thing is, I left a concert. There was a concert here in El Paso. My favorite band of all time was
is it?
playing.
Who?
Attila.
Oh.
Attila?
I'm a big heavy metal person.
All right.
You know what? I'm gonna be honest with you. I've never heard them. Is it 2 T's, 1 T? Yeah, 2 T's.
It's like Attila the Hun. That's where the name
Which
came from.
song?
Oh, really?
Which one?
I bet Greg would be really would
So
know exactly.
my all-time favorite song is now it lost me.
Well, shout out Attila.
I mean, the newest
awesome.
one of their newer songs is called Villain. It's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to
I have
give
like
him a
all
listen.
their songs on here. I was listening to it on the way over, and now I feel like a dummy because I can't remember the name.
That's always the case. There
I
we
like
go.
the song Proving Grounds.
Proving Grounds.
I'm gonna have to write that down so we can
No, but
give it a listen later.
I love that band. I don't know why. It's
Yeah,
the,
no,
the
I
complete
mean,
opposite
it's probably awesome.
of what
Does it hype
look like
you
I'd
up
be
though?
listening to.
Is that what you listen to at the gym or what?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta get all those demons out.
There we go.
Yeah,
Gotta
just-
work them out.
Just the angriest music. So I was at their concert, and
How was that?
like
Was there
Is
some?
this it right?
oh, it was awesome.
Yeah,
It was
alright.
awesome. Yeah,
I like it already. That
yeah.
drum.
Chris is great.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole band's
Yeah.
amazing.
That's cool.
So I told them, I was like, hey, I'm gonna have to like leave and come back because my bike is supposed to be delivered. And they're like, your bike? I'm like, yeah, man, my bike. Like, I'll be back though. So I like pieced out in the middle of the concert. I ran home, I signed the paperwork because Harley dropped it at my door. And then I like rushed back to the other side of town
All
to the
right.
concert hall.
They dropped it off. That's pretty boss.
Yeah, I've had that bike for a little under a year, probably 9 months now.
Nice.
So I'm a fairly new rider.
Okay.
Wow.
But
What made you decide, you know what, I'm gonna get myself a bike. That's it. I'm getting a bike.
so how deep do we want to get in this podcast?
Because what, I'm sorry?
She's like,
I'm 20, how old am I? 27? I'm almost 28.
I've been asking that a lot.
So
lately.
spite has gotten me a lot in my life.
Okay.
You know, doing things out of spite. I think I've always wanted that adrenaline and that kind of be able to say, yeah, that's mine. Like, I
Okay.
ride that, you know?
Definitely.
And it's kind of funny because everyone just thinks you're joking. You're not going to do it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I am. Like, just wait, watch me. So early 2019, and this is something I'm fairly open about on my social media. It's something I don't hide at all. I struggled very much with my mental health.
Okay.
Really?
I was in the lowest part of my life. And it was right before I moved out here.
Yeah.
So I just got out here and I struggled. I was struggling with anger, with some PTSD, with just this overwhelming sadness and
Yeah.
depression. So started going to therapy. I'm a big proponent of self-help and self-care and self-love.
That's what you can do.
And
Yeah, it's like a personal trainer for your mind.
yeah, and it opened up to my therapist, amazing. She helped me see a better way to interact with some people in my life. She helped me see how to get rid of some toxic behaviors that I was holding on to.
Yeah.
And one of the last conversations that she and I had, she's like, what are you doing to help yourself? I don't know. Like, I talk to you once a week, and I go to work, and I'm coming home and loving on my animals, and I go to brunch on the weekends, and I found some friends here, and she's like, no, what are you doing for you?
Yeah.
And she challenged me. She said, you need to think about doing something for you, and you need to allow that to happen in your universe. That was the last conversation we had, because after that, I ended up going to Guatemala last summer for some Army training. So I was away for it ended up being like 6 or 8 weeks in Guatemala. Best trip of my life.
That's not Mexico, right? I only recently...
No, it's Central America.
Yeah, I only recently learned that.
So it was just a wonderful trip with, some incredible people and mentors and leaders, and something like that helped me realize that I can really manifest and bring forth something beautiful in my life if I allow it. And I had never allowed myself that before. So I came back from that trip and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get a bike.
All right.
And I signed up for the MSF course at Harley. I took it for 2 days. By the end of that 2 days, I had my bike bought and I had a date for them to deliver it to my house.
All right. That moved quickly.
And first time I got on that bike, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. Like manifesting happiness and like, I'm doing this for me.
Yep.
And it was hard, buddy. It did not come naturally to ride at all. I was scared of the traffic here. Oh my gosh, like, have you been on I-10 in the afternoons? Jeez.
I'm scared on a semi.
Right? I was scared of the traffic. I was not confident in myself.
Yeah.
So I met a group of female riders here in El Paso.
Oh, wow.
What
are these female congregate?
They're called the Litas. So Litas, Litas.
Okay.
So the Litas is an internationally based female collective of women motorcycle riders. It's not a club. It's really just your connection to other women who ride, who support you, who ride with you, who encourage you. So I joined the Litas here in El Paso.
That's awesome.
And started off riding on the back of the bikes.
Yeah.
and just getting a feel for what these roads feel like, what this culture is. And it was just like I woke up one day and I was like, I'm done being on the back. Yeah. I'm going to do this. It's going to happen. There was a lot of practicing in parking lots. There was a lot of learning what that bike is to me and what my capabilities are. And now I love it. And people ask, well, what made you want to ride, blah, 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 because my family doesn't, like my stepfather rides, but it's not a culture that I grew up around.
Yeah.
It's really because doing that saved me. It really did. And I'm not going to cry on this because you're recording it on video. I'm a very emotional person, but it saved me.
That's beautiful.
It really did. And I don't see myself ever not riding at this point.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful that it led you to that.
Look, I'm crying.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's okay.
I think it's really awesome too how you just emphasized the kind of even like getting on your bike, the journey to that, because you only had it a little bit, but you definitely were a little bit cautious, which is something I recommend to everybody. You won't believe how many of my friends buy their bike, never had ridden before, and then go and drop it because they're not cautious.
I've dumped the bike.
Yeah.
Like I've dropped it. Yeah. I mean, I dropped it in my garage.
Yeah. But it wasn't at an intersection.
No, I've never.
And that's what
knock on wood.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm alluding to because I don't know. It's nice that you're like fine admitting that and even encouraging it, because I was silly when I bought my bike. I went and I picked it up off of I bought it secondhand, and it's a beautiful bike. It's a 2008 Harley Nightster, and it was way too much bike for me at the time. And
that slims a lot of bike for a little me. But
I rid it home, and I was luckily my girlfriend at the time, she kind of just trailed me, so that at the very least if I dropped it she could just brake there, and I made it home. But it was definitely too cool. I did the course that you said you did, and that was about it as far as my experience, and then I went to try to get it 3 miles to my place, so it was definitely a bit of a challenge.
I think when you lose that earlier is when you're more prone to having an accident or to doing something
like,
not
keep that
smart.
respect.
You know,
Keep that respect for the machine.
You got to respect that machine.
And
because always, because it's a death machine. Like you disrespect it, you have no protection whatsoever. And
definitely,
like, you know, some people say dress for the slide, not the ride. I mean, you just always have to be prepared physically, with your equipment, mentally, especially because it's a different experience.
Yeah, no.
If I wake up in the morning and I'm supposed to, like, I ride my bike to work like I did today, and it was way too hot to be riding my bike with a leather jacket on. It was like 106 on the highway. It was awful. So I was going to ride yesterday, but I woke up and I was like, I didn't sleep good. I'm not going to ride today.
It drains you.
You have to mentally prepare yourself.
Yeah, you got to. And I started riding in 2014 or so, and then I lost my arm in case you didn't notice.
What?
But and I haven't altered my bike so that I could ride. So it's been going on 2 years that I haven't. But even in that time, like the last time I rode it, I still got a little bit of an adrenaline dump once I hit a high speed, you know. And I think that, you know, I don't think you should ever get over that, because it keeps you honest, you know. It keeps you focusing on your space cushion and your speed and.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
What else can we talk about?
What?
No, I just gotta call it. Like,
I had a handful of questions. I mean, a handful of questions.
Hey.
Well, for me, you know what?
Okay.
I think that's beautiful that you found that one thing that made you excel to the next level of not just finding yourself, of happiness, of beginning your side business, your passions. I think that's beautiful. For me, honestly, I can honestly say that this whole COVID-19 thing made me realize that I'm not doing jack shit at all, like, with my life. And it kind of lit a fire under my ass to, like, you know what? It's now or never. Like, it's now or never. If not, it's never gonna happen. So for me, this whole COVID thing, everything that's happening, it was like, you know what? Tomorrow is not promised. Like, everybody's living on borrowed time, so I might as well make the most out of it while I'm here and with the people that I have around me. And I just had the most beautiful conversation at the 7-Eleven. This man decided to open up about, you know, his degrees, what he's doing, like his life, and I'm like, that's beautiful that out of all of this, there's still beautiful conversations, beautiful emotions. There's still, like, love will always triumph. Like, love will always triumph.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome.
There's beauty and there's love all around us.
Definitely.
It's coming out of our shells enough to be able to accept that being around us.
Yep.
You know, we can so often go through life with blinders on, I think, and only doing what I need to get done today.
Yep.
Right.
And sticking to that timeline and, okay, I have this schedule, I have to get this done. But if we just slow down for like 5 minutes, like I'm the worst at not even returning a text message.
Yeah, I was about to say, your day goes by.
I can't tell you how many text messages I'll like look at and be like, okay, cool, and never respond. And then 3 weeks later, I realize I left my grandmother on red, you know? And I'm like, I have to purposely put it in my schedule to slow down and connect with people.
Definitely.
Yeah, it almost has to be like an additional thing that you have. Like, it sounds horrible because it's like you're putting someone, like minimizing them down to a list. But when you're like the type of person that functions that way, that you have a certain amount of things that you need to get done, and they never get done, right? But you have it anyway.
Enough of them.
You gotta almost, at least that's what I found with me, is I box out time where I need to like check on my relationships, not like you know, like my relationships with my family.
Oh, we hear you.
And because if not, I'll just go through my day ticking off stuff that I do, and sometimes I won't even, you know, I can acknowledge someone. I've even gotten bad enough to where like I'll interrupt people because of the thoughts that are going through my mind, to where I'm not even listening to what they're saying, and it's been brought up enough to me enough times to where I'm like, okay, you're kind of in this creating habits which are kind of rude, so you gotta check that. Yeah. But you know, it's all like like Oscar said, it's a product of how you habituate yourself to stay at a certain level of busyness, right?
Yeah.
And
motivated.
Definitely. And sometimes like you gotta like check on that a little bit. You obviously have a lot juggling on your plate, so I can see that as more of the problem. As Oscar had a realization that aside from work, he was just laying down.
Yeah, pretty much.
Although you do work out a lot. How much?
I do work out.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't work out as much because that was another thing. Like I was pretty much stressing myself.
Yeah.
Because of the workouts. Because I was like, shit, I missed a workout. Oh, I didn't eat right. Like I didn't do this, I didn't do that, and it was to the point where I was stressing myself out, and then I was just gaining weight and blah blah blah. And
stress eating.
And when you get in that mindset, it's unhealthy.
Yeah, definitely.
Like at my lowest, I looked my best because I was almost punishing myself by being in the gym 3-4 hours a day, like just tuning the world out, not dealing with my own problems and emotions, but also not connecting with the people around me who were trying to show me love and care.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel you, Oscar. I mean, I've been there. I went to the gym last night for the first time in quite a while because of the
COVID?
health pandemic, the COVID.
Yeah.
Well,
And it was great to be there, but I'm like trying to start slowly stepping back into it.
Definitely.
And my arms are very sore.
I was
today,
gonna say,
I'll be
don't you
honest.
hate that?
And you rode here too.
Yeah, my arms are sore. I've been riding all day. I've been like sweating all day. It's just, I'm a mess today.
Well, you're doing great for this combo.
I contemplated makeup too, and I was like, not today. It's too hot.
Yeah, I did put on some for this.
Jesse, what did you learn about yourself during this pandemic?
I have a lot of demons.
As we all do, I think. The human condition.
I have a lot of toxic habits that I've been trying to unscrew and unwind, and
you gotta massage them out because they become, it's like,
even now I'm so tense, just for no reason. I'm just tensing and stressing, and I have a lot of worries, but it's just trying to not worry. It sounds pretty, but don't do it. Just don't worry, and just live life. And
you evaluate
switching that light switch there.
Yeah, like how much can I worry about something that's out of my control?
Exactly.
And how much should I? Yeah.
That was the first 2 months of COVID.
Yeah.
Because I was in denial. I'm like, this isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
We're not going to be in quarantine. We're going to be fine. This is going to just, like Ebola, only 8 people had it here. And Ebola, I was stressed. Realistically, it would be a stretch for me to contract Ebola.
Yeah.
I'm a worrier.
Yeah.
I'm just a worry person.
Yeah, you know what? I remember a while ago I did a sensory deprivation tank session.
Right.
Which if you're, I don't know. Well, if y'all are familiar with them, it's basically you go into a tank that deprives most of your senses from what their normal stimuli. Like it's completely dark. It's soundproof as much as possible, or sound dampened. It has not skin temperature water, external body temperature water that's super salinated, so you float on it. So basically, you're in there alone with your like pure thoughts without the you're like, oh no.
That's scary.
It is it was very scary. However, besides the scary part that I went through, I noticed how tense my body was. Like not, like we're talking about maybe our emotional tensions, but it probably like is, I forget the word, but it's your body exhibits it, right? So
like I find myself at work like this, and I'm like, man,
yeah, for sure.
I thought that I let my head relax about 6 times. I was like, that's about as relaxed as I can get. And then I would relax.
Vein popping through the side of your head.
And then I would let go again, and I'm like, oh wow, I was still holding it up. So man,
the whole time.
Jesus. So physiologically, like you can think about how stress really like takes a toll on your body, you know?
Yep.
If you're constantly like...
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's like energy that you're like, that's like almost a workout, you know? And then,
absolutely. It's exhausting.
Yeah. And then
it exhausts you physically, it exhausts you mentally, it exhausts you emotionally.
Yeah.
It's just like a downward spiral. And, you know, you see online all the time about self-care and, you know, this is what I do for self-care. I'm going to wear a face mask. I'm going to take a bubble bath. I love bubble baths, by the way. Yeah. But, you know, it's a fine line between, like, self-care and self-destruction.
Yeah, definitely.
Like
getting a little carried away.
Sometimes I am in such a rut and in such a dark space, you know, clouds just hanging over me for a few days. And self-care for me during that time is just kind of letting myself feel those emotions and that destruction. Cry it out, eat pizza, lay on the couch, and then force yourself to get up and take a shower.
Yeah.
And get out of it. Showering is so important.
Yes. I have long suffered depression, PTSD. Yeah. I have complex PTSD.
People don't understand how taking a shower sometimes is a chore.
It is a chore.
Oh,
it is a chore. And
it's almost impossible.
You know, and I'll be the first one to admit, you know, I don't shower, you know, is you know.
Girl, same. High five.
It's, you know, it's like but it's like you owe yourself a shower. You just owe yourself. If it's the simplest thing, you owe yourself a shower.
Self-love sometimes
yourself clean clothes.
Is washing your hair.
Yeah.
It's doing the bare minimum because when you're stuck in that headspace, and you know, I think people, I'm not going to speak for everybody who suffers from a mental illness, but from my experience, you know, I know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I know it comes and goes in cycles. Sometimes it's because I haven't been taking care of myself. Yeah. Sometimes it's because something triggers those feelings. But there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to sit in it for a bit and hope that light and that energy enough to say, all right, Jordan, you've done fantastic. Go take a shower. You hope that comes in 3 days rather than 3 weeks.
Right.
And you just never know.
For your neighbors.
For me, it was always because I have so much anxiety. So my brain is always going, like it's going. And for me, a shower, I'm being straight up. Like for me, a shower, my old lady, Sarah Leon, she was like, oh, you got a triple, quadruple wipe. And I'm like, I'm a single wipe kind of guy. Like, I'm just wipe and then roll. And then
my husband's laughing.
Hand washing, forget it. Never washed my hands. Yeah. I would always don't shake my hand, Jordan. Sorry, you already shook my hand. Now I wash my hands. Now because of the whole COVID thing, like definitely I wash my hands. Yeah. But before that, like I had so much anxiety that for me it was like go like personal hygiene, forget about it. Nails long, hair looking greasy, like smelling like skunk. I don't know. It's just things. For me, it was just anxiety of not planning things out and having a set guideline as to how my days are gonna go and just winging it every day.
Yeah, and then you rush to
definitely.
Then there's less planning because you're rushing through the planning phase, right?
Yes.
Can we stop talking about me for a second?
And then,
you know what? It's very common. It's very common, and I thought it was powerful. And it's such a raw emotion that you said that right now you feel a little stressed, you feel a little anxious, you feel a little like I can't even go outside without thinking like Jesus Christ, I might be in the middle of a gunfire or something. I'm gonna be straight up honest with you. Like I walk into Walmart and I'm like, where are the exits? And do I have something that I can defend myself with for sure?
Things are definitely tense. I wanted really quickly before we move on, you mentioned like minimizing self-care. Do you think that's something that you're touching on because the social media world, what people are telling you is self-care is sometimes a little bit more than what you find it to be with you? Like you said, sometimes it's as simple as getting through the emotions you're feeling at the moment and like and then like showering to like kind of cap that off, right?
Yeah.
Whereas maybe something that is trending is like go get your nails done or go.
Yeah, I started my public Instagram 4 or 5 years ago, and in that time, have been very fortunate to meet people and work with companies. But I really don't like social media.
Yeah.
Because it's such a highlight reel. There's no reality on social. There's no reality on my Instagram feed.
Yeah.
And I'm the first to tell people that. Like, I try my best to exhibit who I really am, as genuine as I can be through there. But I'm not an influencer. I'm not influencing anybody to do anything. Let's be real. I'm posting dog and cat videos most of the time on my stories, and
which we appreciate.
Yeah,
we need that.
I love that video where Harvey is like full of cat litter.
Yes, he eats cat turds. Like the other day, I came home and he's like so excited to see me, and there's this little white piece of stuff on his nose, and I'm looking, and I'm like, he had a snack before I got home. So, but yeah, I just, I think that especially for who we consider to be influencers, there's such a weight on someone's shoulders to do what society wants them to do for the public eye. And some of that includes talking about self-care and almost glamorizing it. Am I saying that right?
Well, they sell you products.
That's exactly what I wanted to verbalize.
Yeah, advertising, CBD products that helps with this or whatever. And maybe it does, but for some people,
it might not work.
They're never going to speak openly about the fact that brushing their teeth was the biggest accomplishment. They got checked off their list that day. And that's not to say that that's not a huge accomplishment for them. If that's all that you could do that day, I'm damn proud of you for doing that.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit in a luxurious bubble bath and read a book about washing your face with a face mask on to feel empowered as a woman, as a human, as someone who has struggles.
That's beautiful.
I'm gonna start crying on your podcast.
That's beautiful because
you're getting me in my feels.
It's so true.
Yeah, even today, you're obviously a busy person, and I try so hard to be, and I think that I'm generally quite, I keep myself pretty busy. But even today, my day started at 10 a.m. and that seems like such a fail to me. When
I'm very jealous of that.
Yeah. When normally it's very early, because I for no reason, because I think that I need to be on this grind constantly. Right. And then there was such a feeling of shame for the next hour, for sleeping in or taking a day off or something.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit of kind of what I understood from your sometimes you gotta feel what you feel, and then the most basic thing that we do as people, and most people, is the cap to that.
Yeah, I'm the world's worst at I'm sad, so I'm gonna listen to sad music and get more sad.
Yeah, definitely.
But
Stained, that's my go-to.
Yeah, I'm a Sam Smith
It's been a
girl.
Oh, I love Sam Smith.
So I sit in my feelings, but I think that's something that's healthy at one point, as long as you can come to the understanding that, okay, I have felt this, whatever it may be. I felt the anger. I've gone to the gym. I felt it. I have sat and listened to sad songs for 4 hours and cried and felt sorry for myself. I felt.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna leave this space, leave these emotions, and work towards doing something to bring a positive into my life. And sometimes that is cleaning your whole house in one evening because you get a burst of energy, or starting a new project and finding that that excitement. Sometimes it's literally brushing your teeth, taking a shower, and that's okay. And that's not. I think stuff like that is not talked about enough on social media. As far as
a highlight reel, as you say, it's not not talked about in the most
raw,
general,
way.
Something that maybe everyone has gone through here and there. Not everyone.
And everyone does self-care in their own way. Sorry, Mom. I have a back tattoo down my spine because that was self-care for me at that time. Putting what I did on my body as that reminder was almost a sort of therapy for me. And I think a lot of people with tattoos agree that like that feeling is of, you know, the needle on your skin is a way to let emotions out, whatever that may be. So if you look at it,
also what body part they're tattooing too, because it's severely painful.
Yes. I have one on my rib cage and one down my spine.
My armpit.
None were enjoyable.
Okay, I was about to ask which type of tattoo person are you?
And my very first tattoo, which was like one of those, it's 1 a.m., I'm going into a random tattoo shop. The girl was so heavy-handed that it's literally like scarred into my body. So, you know, live and learn. Live and learn.
Your bones, you know.
I am embossed.
Is that feeling of pain for me?
Do you have any tattoos, Oscar?
I have 2 tattoos.
Okay.
It's one on my chest that says "Powered by God," and then a Texas, of course, on my back.
All right.
That's
Of
for
course.
sure.
It's a
Like,
given.
Of course.
Y'all can go to hell. I'll go to Texas.
I thought that was Greg.
it's pain for me when I'm working out. If I'm about to throw up, or if my legs feel like they're about to give up, for me that's like I'm doing it. Like that feels.
This
that
guy gets it, man.
Feels awesome.
Crazy.
And perspective, more than anything, your perspective of things. My fiance and I were talking about this just yesterday. I was telling her it's because perspective is everything. When I walk into the house, like I have blinders on and I only see the mess that might be on the counter. But then if I actually take a look around, I left a lot of mess everywhere else. But I decide to pretty much put blinders on and focus on the toothbrush or what are those called, the tweezers that you might have left there, and then get upset about it, which is really stupid on my part. And I told her, like, I'm learning these things.
Wait, you're saying your lady maybe gives you a little bit of stress for that?
No, actually, it's the other way around. Because I lived with 2 brothers. So they were messy. They were really messy. So I did my best to clean the restroom, have everything swept up and everything. So when we moved together, it was kind of hard for me to adapt to another person, you know, because they have their own habits, they have their own way of doing things. So at the beginning, definitely, like I would try to impose my will, like the way that I wanted to do things, but it doesn't work that way. It has to be really mutual, 100%. Like it has to be like, you know what, like, and more than anything, I learned to be completely honest with her. Like, you know what, like this is exactly the way it's going down. I don't want you to get upset. I don't want to start a fight. Like this is not about a fight. Like I just want to bring it out and give you my perspective of things, because that's the biggest thing. We all live different lives. We're all different people.
It's important, man, because most interactions I have with people are very like this, for example. Like there's no reason for us to like really disagree on much. Maybe it's something that we could get into as a conversation topic, but we understand that we'll, you know, that's not going to affect me 3 hours from now.
Right. It's a mutual respect.
Well, when you're living with somebody,
sometimes that goes out the window.
Well, because and you know what? It's always lack of communication. I know most of my altercations with anyone that I've lived with or had like a prolonged relationship with is just like me being frustrated about what I wanted, and sometimes I didn't even know because I hadn't stopped to think about what I wanted or how to verbalize it, and then I just act kind of dickish or this or that, and then it's just like this passive aggression that isn't getting anything done.
Nope.
And luckily I've had some amazing people in my life that have kind of, you know, pointed it out to me. And, I'd like to think that I do quite a bit of self-reflection as well. So, you learn to get better at that. But yeah, I was just thinking about it because my girlfriend kind of is good friends now with one of my friends, and he's been kind of like having girl issues, so he's been kind of moody. And then she told him like, hey, you're acting like a fucking dick. And then and then he was like, and I knew he had been acting like a dick, but I was just like minding my business, but it was kind of annoying me. And she was just like
straight out.
Yeah. And now it's like fine. And I was like, you're so awesome.
Well, it's because you're homies. Like,
yeah.
You're supposed to let your homie know, like, you know what, man, I don't agree with what you said. Like, it's okay to not agree.
Yeah.
It's okay to tell. It's because also, like, your company, if they're not open-minded to hear, you know what, man, you're kind of fucking it up. Like, and then if they can accept and be like, you know what, man, let's evaluate. Let's see what we could do, what I can do better, what we can do better. It takes a certain human being, and it took me a while.
It's a skill.
Get rid of that ego. More than anything, get rid of my ego.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm managing like properties right now, and some of the guys that we lease to, and some of the guys that we work with are just really cool guys, right? But then at the end of the day, I have to kind of come up with. If I need to collect rent, or if I need to let them know that they're out of reaching contracts somehow. You have to find a way to do that without offending, but also get across what you want from that person. And that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying it's a skill, and I'd like to think that I'm getting better at it, but every day, learning every day.
And a big part of that is getting rid of your ego, or not taking an ego to the table. And I commend you for speaking up and admitting that an ego is something you dealt with in your personal relationships. I mean, that something like that can be so detrimental to personal relationships, professional relationships. If you were to walk up to one of the people you're managing and just be like, yo, man, where's my money? That's not getting anywhere, And there are people like that. And the blinders that you're talking about, there are people like that unfortunately don't see how their ego has such a negative impact on not only every person that they're coming in contact with, but just like their whole community base.
Yeah, and themselves, if they
and themselves.
Yeah, if they burn that bridge, the bridge is burned.
Yeah,
so,
everybody's wrong except them.
Yeah, right.
And it's it's definitely something that takes a little bit. I'd like to think that. Maybe it's like just kind of the bubble I'm in, but that the culture that we're kind of that we're entering with social media, one of the things that maybe it's doing it a little more superficially than it should be, that you can argue that, but it's also the first time we've had social media, as a species. And I think that the idea of addressing your ego is definitely out there, and trying to be stressed to, I would like to say, especially in our culture, to like men, because we're kind of, we got a big ego in it.
It's the Hispanic culture stresses that out a lot. Well, if a man like acts this way, or if a man doesn't act this way, like you're pretty much not a man, or if you cry, or if you show any type of weakness, or you mentioned therapy earlier, and you're a big proponent of therapy. Like in my family, something's wrong with you. Like what's wrong with you?
It's
like,
addressed.
Are you crazy? Like what's going on?
Yeah, there are so many cultural aspects that play into it. There's so many psychological aspects that play into that too, and I'm certainly not a psychologist, but I remember reading an article, years ago when Instagram first came out.
Wow.
And I was like a sophomore in college, I want to say, and I had my first little Instagram account, and I was like, I don't know what this is, blah blah blah, here's a picture of my cat.
Right.
And I read an article that said something about how people who take more selfies are more narcissistic.
Yeah.
Did not know the depths of that word until years later when I was dealing with a narcissistic boss and opening my eyes to, relationships all around me that were impacting me on such a negative level. And it was all about, their ego. And like you said, they're always right and they're never wrong. And that in and of itself is a whole podcast episode that we don't need to get into, because I could talk forever about that.
Yeah. Well, the important thing is that I think the idea to address it is more prevalent than it was maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's because all ideas are being shared a little bit more. And like just even to talk about some of the horrific videos that I've been seeing, a lot of the police action that we're seeing right now is basically like, a shielded ego, you got this and many I can't speak to how I would act if I have some sort of authority over me. I'd like to think that I'd be a better person, but then you look at history, you look at I forget which experiments that they did in like Stanford in like the 80s where they did the prison experiment, right? And it's kind of like a given that most, or not, I don't want to say most, but a lot of people kind of act like dicks when they're in positions of authority.
Yeah.
And all of that is, like your ego telling you that because you're here, you must be doing something right.
Yeah,
So you get to tell people what to do.
I think there are so many cultural and societal changes that we're viewing real time right now through social media. That it's painful. It's painful to watch.
Oh, yeah.
It's painful to be involved with, and it's painful to speak about. But change doesn't happen without a little pain.
Yeah.
And these issues that we're seeing with, oppression and racial injustice and, like you said, police officers just doing things that for some are so unimaginable of someone who wears a public service uniform.
Someone who's held to a higher standard.
Someone who's held to a higher standard, and you don't know someone's background or what's going on in their mind or what's going on in their heart. You only see the highlight reel on social media, but at the root of all of it, of course, my personal opinion, not speaking for any organization that I may be affiliated with through my job. At the root of all of it, it's change happening real time that needs to happen.
Yes.
That has been pushed aside or pushed under the rug for hundreds of years. And like you said, we all deal with things differently.
Yeah.
Whether that be how we deal with our mental health or how we deal with people in our work, things like that. We deal with things differently. But we're very much the same, and that's what people are not realizing through social media. We're very much the same. When I walked into this room today, I didn't know that sometimes you don't shower.
Yeah.
But girl, sometimes showering is hard for me too.
Yeah.
We're very much the same. I didn't know that you rode a bike.
Yeah.
Cool. I ride a bike. We share so much despite having our own differences and our own way of responding to things. And I think that for me is what's the most heartbreaking, to watch all of this unfold on social media. I mean, I'll be the first to admit where I grew up and how I grew up, not by on purpose. I just was not exposed to Black culture very often.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very small southern town in Georgia, and we just, we did our own thing in our own little bubble. I was always pushed by my parents and my peers and the community that I grew up in to explore new things and to get cultural experience, you know, traveling and.
Was the military what kind of did that for you initially?
Yeah, I'll say my first real experience with
different cultures. I mean, I went to Haiti when I was in high school. Okay.
Oh, cool.
On a mission trip, and like that was my first big real experience. But just everyday life and interaction. I was in college.
Okay.
I was a freshman in college.
Which college did you go to?
I went to Georgia Southern.
Georgia Southern?
And I knew I wanted to join the ROTC so that I could be in the military.
Yeah.
I don't come from a military family.
Okay.
So that was a huge shock to my parents.
Yeah.
They had no idea what it meant, and to be frank, I didn't either. And I signed my name on the dotted line, and I got a little scholarship, and I went to school, and I just knew that I was doing
How did they feel about it?
ROTC. So that leads me to my point. I love my family.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you don't know something, it's inherent of us to not support it.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? I was a musician in school, in high school. So I had quite a few offers for scholarships for me to play my trumpet.
Oh, that's a nice instrument to play.
And I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I wanted to do this Army thing,
Yeah.
you know, honestly not knowing what it was.
Yeah.
Or what the depths of it would be. And so I remember telling both of them, hey, I'm going to do this. I want to do this. And they're like, no, I was 17. I
Yeah.
wasn't even 18 yet. I still technically was not an adult. So they're doing their best to try to say, you know, you're very good at this. Do this. Do music.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know. And the professor of military science at the college that I went to, the guy who recruited me into signing on that dotted line and getting that scholarship and pursuing my dreams in the military,
Yeah.
was a person of color. And to this day, he is the most influential man I've ever met. He was my mentor in college. I look up to him so much. I'm going to cry again on your podcast. That man changed the course of my life and supported me when he had no vested interest in me at all. There were 300 other cadets in that program.
Yeah.
He could have, I could have been another number. But for me, the very first day I met him, he said, you're going to become a public affairs officer. And I'm like, cool, man, what's that? I had no idea.
Yeah.
By the time I graduated and commissioned, I had a plan. And I said, I'm going to do X, and then I'm going to do Y, and all of that's going to lead to me becoming a public affairs officer, because by that time of 4 years of mentorship and growth in this program, I knew that is kind of what I'm good at. That's kind of what I want to do. I went back to the college 2 or 3 years ago and saw him, and the first thing he said to me after not speaking to me for years, he goes, hey, you a PAO yet? A public affairs officer. And I was like, yes, sir, I am. And he just came up and hugged me. I mean, this man changed the course of my life.
Yeah.
And, I am forever grateful for him and for his leadership and his mentorship and his guidance. And I've met so many incredible people from all different backgrounds, some who we literally have nothing in common. But they're part of my journey. They've shaped me to be the leader that I am, and to strive to be the leader that I want to be when I'm serving. And I think, like I said, that's what's most upsetting to me, to watch all of this on social media, because I just want to scream. I don't understand.
Yeah.
I'll never understand.
Yeah.
But I wish you could see that we're not that different.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish you could see that we all breathe the same air. Our hearts beat. We all have struggles. We all have successes.
Yep.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, it's yeah.
Before I cry.
It's on point. I mean, for me, thinking about everything that's going on, we live down in the valley where there's cows, pecan trees, farming, a lot of Hispanic culture because we're right there with the border. A lot of farming families. Black culture, African American culture was not really there.
Right.
We had a mixed. His name was Giovanni.
One.
And he acted more like.
See, we had one growing up. The high school that I went to, we had one person of color.
So for me, it was foreign. I mean, because all I knew was my Hispanic family. Like that's pretty much it in our culture. And then the internet came around, and I started looking at hip hop. Well, for me, hip hop was everything to me. Like I didn't even know what they were saying. I didn't even know what was going on.
It's just the beat.
It was for me. It was like it makes me feel cool. So when I finally got to get into depth as far as what it was for as a struggle for all the cultures, it was crazy. And in high school, I joined JROTC for 2 years, and First Sergeant Decatur was that man taught me everything that I know about being honest, about being fair, about always doing the right thing. Because there was a lot of people in there that would take advantage of his humble heart. And I remember this one time, it stayed in my mind, some guy, he was selling popsicles for 25 cents, and he left, step out, and guys grabbed like 4 or 5 of them without paying for them. And I took money out of my pocket and was like, no, dude, like, that's not what we're here for. Like, that's not right. And to this day, I think about him because, like I said, besides my mother and my father, that his influence in those 2 years, because even after that, he kept talking to me like, hey, what's up, Oscar? He would always say hi to me, super cool, wherever he saw me. I was always a weightlifter, so he would always comment about my physique. He's like, hey, getting bigger.
He's a teacher?
And and he told me, he's all like, you know what, whenever you get famous, I want a blue Escalade with 22-inch rims. And I'm all like, bet. Like, I got you. To this day, like, I swear to God, I'm going to get him that blue Escalade with the 22-inch rims.
Yeah.
Because, Jesus, I don't know. Anybody in your life can be a mentor. Anybody in your life can come and add to your life. It doesn't matter who they are, what they do. I don't know. It's just, it's part of my anxiety, part of my confusion as to like what's going on.
Well, I think it's important also to know that you're not wrong for where you grew up or the culture that you grew up in. Yeah. It's okay to have the experiences that you had. It doesn't make you any less of an ally, of a supporter. It doesn't make you a bad person. Yeah. But if we realize our own biases and our own blinders, right? And actively work to break down those barriers, that's where we're going to see change. We're just seeing it right now in a very vocal, physical way. Yeah,
for sure.
And I'm not the one to judge whether this way is right or wrong, but, at the end of the day, everybody, people of color, the Hispanic community, myself as a very transparent white person, we all have our own cultural biases in the way that we were raised. But it's okay to say, hey, I never experienced that growing up, or I never knew much about that growing up.
But I want to learn.
I want to learn. Help me learn. I didn't know much about the Hispanic community before I moved here. Definitely didn't know much before I went to Guatemala last summer for 6 weeks and had to like learn how to speak and get around and interact with these people. By the end of that experience and just being, just diving right into it, I have such a love and respect for your culture, for the Spanish culture, for the people in Guatemala that I met. It's such a beautiful, family-focused culture. And I was grateful for the opportunity to learn about it. And I think, if we as a collective, if people just step outside, get off your front porch, get out of the county line, and look and learn and take it in. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to put anything on your agenda. You're not out to make a name for yourself. Just listen and learn. And I guarantee in most instances, you'll be invited with open arms. If you come at it without an ego, willing to learn
without
and
your opinion more than anything,
and to accept love. The way that I was raised is not right or wrong compared to how anyone else in this room or in this country or in this world was raised. My beliefs aren't any better than anyone else's just because they're different. And social media especially has helped, I think, to polarize us as humans.
Yeah, I mean, it helps you align yourself with whoever seems like they're
most like you.
Yeah, and so then that, of course, you're gonna create these arbitrary divisions between you and those that are slightly different. But it's like you say, even if you're slightly different, ultimately, like the human things, the wanting the best for your parents, the fear of death, that's all just human, and it's like the little intricacies that cause that make us seem different, and they're not. I think what did I want to answer? Oh yeah, one of the things that I think also some people feel like they need to do more. Some people feel like right now I think they say like white guilt, and I think that's always been such a weird thing to me, because it's like I don't ever, unless like let's say like we're here and then like my grandpa comes in and like says something that is very antiquated, then I would be a little embarrassed, but I would explain it as that. And I think that's where it ends. Like I don't owe anybody else anything because of what my grandparents, what my parents did. And I still firmly believe that. I do see some kind of debate on that politically, but I still think like if you set yourself on an even plane, like I've been here for 26 years, and I owe anyone whatever I've done in those 26 years to owe them, but anything before that, is like literally out of my control.
So in those 26 years, right?
Yeah.
Look at how much change you have experienced in just 26 years. Like, I remember our first family computer. I remember
AOL dial-up.
I remember watching Rugrats for the first time. Which is funny because
bad quality that cartoon is?
Oh yeah, it's awful.
the Razor.
Yeah.
I had
YouTube.
the Razor.
How much change we have had as, are we millennials? As young millennials, how much change we have had?
No, we're
old
young
millennials are like
We're
40.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know what that would be. I'm 28.
You're a millennial.
You're
Millennial?
Yeah. So how much change we have experienced, and then look at your grandparents in their 70 or 80 years, how much change they have experienced.
Yeah.
It's so much to take in as a person, and not by any fault of anyone's. If you stayed in your hometown, or you had your blinders on, if you lived in a circle and you're happy in that circle, that's all you're gonna know.
Yeah.
So with social media, we're being forced out of our comfort circles in a big way.
Yeah.
And it's a lot for somebody to take in if If they've already experienced so much in 80 years or in 60 years or however old they are.
Like an expectation for what should be, and then all of a sudden.
For them to see this collectively with everything else, it's a lot. So, you know, we're not going to change things overnight.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm not going to say that because I can't speak to that because I don't know and don't understand.
How hopeful are you for our, you know, like the millennial and next generation?
I am hopeful that we do see a systematic change, that we do see progress in how we treat everybody, in how our politicians run this country, in how we go about our everyday lives. I'm hopeful that by the time my kids, whenever I have kids, are my age, that we're not still having this conversation actively.
Yeah.
That this will be something that we look on as, I remember that time, and it was a radical period of change.
Yeah.
And it was worth it.
Yep. Definitely.
That's what I hope. I hope that we can look back to that. I don't think it will be easy, but it starts with kindness and empathy. Empathy is something that is so hard for some people to understand and to feel, because it requires breaking down your walls so much. And it requires you stepping out of your circle and literally saying, I don't give a shit about my circle. Let me focus on yours. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard for people.
Be selfless.
It's going to require kindness and empathy at its core to get to where we see change.
Yeah.
Systematic change and equity and a compassionate people. You know, we're the United States. For the longest time, everyone viewed us as like a standard.
Yeah.
You know, however that may be interpreted. We're a standard.
Yeah.
And the message that we're sending right now, it's just not kind, man.
Well,
it's just not kind.
I mean, it's a lot of fire, but like you said, you know, sometimes, or as we know historically, it's kind of how you know that something's happening.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like.
For sure.
I'm sure that the abolition, I can never pronounce that word, but the people who marched with like Dr. King, you know.
Abolitionist?
There you go. I still didn't say it right. I'm sure that they don't regret anything that they did at that period, and I'm sure that right now is many steps forward from that. So I only agree with you with the direction that we're heading in.
And it's important to know that your grandfather or our great-grandparents may never get to a point where they grasp what is happening right now.
Oh, he says some goofy stuff.
Oh,
definitely.
Yeah. It's important to still love and be kind to those people, even if we disagree.
Yeah.
And understand that you, as a person, have a right to say, I don't agree with you on this topic. I love you. I'm either going to love you from a distance from now on, or we're just going to go about and not talk about this.
Yeah.
It's not worth ruining relationship with your grandparents because they don't understand and they're sharing fake news on Facebook or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it's not worth the conversation at Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
It's because they, like my parents, they're coming more to age.
Yeah.
But some of their views are kind of outdated.
Yeah.
Especially my father.
Yeah.
So I tell him like, Dad, like you cannot say that. Like that's
You can't. Yeah.
We're
can't think that no more.
We're moving on. Like like everybody's thinking differently. Everybody's progressing. Everybody's moving on. Like you have to get with her or be left behind. And I feel like the next shift is gonna be beautiful. And I've always always said it that, there's always resistance when there's going to be big change. There's always a barrier when you're about to break through, when you're about to make this big breakthrough, like there's going to be resistance. And this is going to be a big change. That's why it's really big. It's really big, and it's affecting everyone.
It's crazy.
And
I've never lived, it's not like we're that old, but this is probably the craziest time.
This is a turning point in our lives. This is a turning point in our children's lives.
So we'll see.
We lived through September 11th as a big turning point for our generation.
A little younger than.
This is just another turning point, and I feel very weird even speaking my beliefs and my opinions about this, because I struggle with, do I have a right?
I think you always have a right to express your opinion and your thoughts. And the best way to really chisel them out to what you would like them to be is by sharing them. That way you get it either bounces back positively, or someone's or
someone calls you out and they're like, actually.
Yeah, and then if you're preaching if you're practicing what you're preaching, then you're let me analyze this that I'm saying, and then you could either, you hold your ground when you analyze and you hold it to be true, and then you change when you're you have a point.
Yeah.
So I think I don't think anyone should be embarrassed to share their opinion or what have you, but always be willing to change that with new evidence, with new opinions.
And remain open to learn.
And that's difficult, though.
Anything, Jessica?
I'm as hard-headed as anybody.
I'm sorry, what?
Anything?
It's, as a black woman, it's very hard.
Oh, you heard about?
Yeah, I'm half
nice.
black. I'm half black.
All right.
I've been formulating my words.
Okay.
This entire
Gosh, you
time.
shouldn't have let me just blab this whole time. I'm so sorry.
No, it's your interview. I want you to speak. I want you to have your time, and you didn't say anything. You're not. You're definitely.
You guys are in agreement.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's why I stay quiet, because there's nothing I don't.
That's
I
awesome.
don't agree with. It's. I guess America for me has been a very different. Not a very different. It's been just a different. We are the same people. We really are. Let's see. It's a really hard subject. It's just
it's touchy.
A lot of people are uncomfortable right now, and I feel people are lashing out because they're uncomfortable, and they don't want to be uncomfortable for very much longer. So people are lashing out. They're getting angry. The people that are against this movement are lashing out. Not the people that are protesting.
Yeah.
The
Well,
people
I mean,
that are saying, well, I wish they did this. I wish they did this. Why didn't they do this? Don't do this. Don't do that. I think they're just really uncomfortable because there's a lot of things that are being taken away from them, or a lot of things that are.
Oh, there's definitely a power.
Opened up.
There's no growth in a comfort zone, though.
Right. Exactly. I feel people need to be uncomfortable in order to experience a change, either forward, backwards. In order to progress, they need to be uncomfortable.
And you're definitely right, where there's a power shift that is attempting to take hold, and it's not necessarily one as in we want to like the movement right now wants to take. It's just that there's a to me there seems to be a systematic oppression, and it feels like you can't get your fair share even in a supposed merit-based system. And if it was a merit-based system, then there would be no backlash. There would be no resistance to the change. But it's clear that it's not merit-based because it had to get to this for black people and other systematically oppressed people to be heard about getting their fair share of their fair shot in this life, in this world, in the economy. So there's definitely going to be a power. I don't want to. It's difficult to say what word, because of course to gain more of a limited resource, you have to take from some. But that's only we're trying to get to a place where it's just more equally distributed, rather than what it is now. So
For everyone.
and there's definitely like I try to think about it, and I'm like, damn, if I was born uber rich like some of these guys, and my whole life I'd been given everything that I wanted, and I literally played with money, with amounts of money that are like not even unheard of to the majority of the people. Like I would probably try and hold on to that as much as I could too, if I felt like it was being threatened. Or I would be so oblivious to the fact that to the how much it affects someone if I'm playing with this money, if that's my like change. And like, let's say, you're mounting stocks. If you own like a company that's worth trillion or billions and stuff, you could play with money a lot more easily than someone who's working for minimum wage, So there's a huge disparity in how you're living there. And of course, this seems like it's threatening that. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that it's threatening that, because if the majority of people have to live how it seems that they're living, then it's not the equity's not where it needs to be.
Right.
So I don't know. It's difficult and
It's a really difficult topic.
I think everyone.
There's so many aspects. Sorry, my voice cracked.
You're fine.
There's so many aspects to it, and it's all complex. I like the onion thing. There's layers.
Oh yeah, it's an ogre.
It's just an onion.
The Shrek era.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That resonated with me as a child. And he has onion. It
resonated with me because
That's how cranky I am.
I'm like, I too am an onion. But
I'm the donkey.
Oh, this is my favorite.
Becoming more conscious about the gap in wealth, about how you're using your money, about how you're spending your money. The whole stimulus check, that whole thing was crazy. There's people that needed it, and there's some other people that didn't need it. It's just, for me, it was like, that's crazy. That's crazy that a lot of people live paycheck to paycheck, and there's money being printed.
Yeah. Literally printed. I only recently found out that what is it called? The bank, the central bank?
Treasury or whatever?
Yeah, that it's not even a government agency. It's just like a private thing that deals with the government, and like so. And I don't understand it enough to like really go into it right now, but it seemed a little sketchy when I was YouTubing at 3 a.m.
I think a lot of people need to embrace that. Like, I don't have enough knowledge to understand this.
If people on the internet could embrace that and just not like step away from the keyboard.
Right.
I don't have enough knowledge to speak on this appropriately.
Right.
Yeah.
So my opinion is so limited that it's not contributing to this conversation.
And that's okay.
And that's
That is
okay.
And you could always go
Entirely okay.
look it up.
The comments where people are like following, they're not engaging, they're just listening or learning or like looking for their shot. I don't know. If more people could be like following to learn, to listen, to hear your stories, to seek change without inputting my own bias in it.
Yeah.
It's so crazy because don't we all want our thoughts or our opinions to be heard?
Yeah.
But at this point, right now, I'm learning more and more that I just gotta shut up. It's not my time to speak or to have an opinion. Like, it's my time to listen and do something about it. As much as I can do about it, do something about it. Whatever it is, do something. And if that's educating my little sister, I thought it was awesome that we posted up the voting, census. Like, two of my coworkers, I'm like, did you guys fill out your census? And they're like, no, like, what for? Like, we're Hispanic. Like, oh, and I have my cousin in my house. Bro, put up, like, you don't understand.
Yo, that's like 6 votes.
It helps us when we vote. It helps us for representation. It helps us for funding. Like, please fill out your census. Like, vote. Like, we do have a voice. And
I mean, yeah, and it like really shows you that like let's say you know this like podcast relationship goes on, we all like you know. Have success in it and whatnot, and then like later on you want to run for office or something, and then I already like have an idea, like you're Latino, right, and you want to run for a higher office we're underrepresented for sure as far as ratio to the population. Then I know we're more woke, so we vote, so I know that, and then I know that you're a good leader. I have faith in you, and now we have someone that's representing the community a little bit more, you know, at least a shot on it. And then if more people are voting, then and that's kind of like what I feel like you're getting at as far as representation with sharing the knowledge.
And even going to city council meetings, like
I missed one for a street.
So even going to stuff like that, like that would be like I don't do that. Like I'm a hypocrite if I'm telling people like you need to do this.
That would have been my first, but I forgot.
don't do that, but that's something that definitely now more than ever I'm looking into because
I want my street fixed.
I was against the stadium, but I was like, what do we need a stadium for? Like,
like how did we get here? How did we get two stadiums here?
Yeah. I was like, a Six Flags I can understand. But
now we're talking, baby.
Stadiums, but that's just me speaking out of ignorance because I don't go to the meetings.
Yeah.
The open public meetings.
Yeah.
So
I understand.
do more of that.
Yeah.
That's like the word of mouth reaction, right? Like you got told already like 6 times down the
my
line.
professor at UTEP, he's a political science, and he was like, your midterm project, you need to go to these council meetings and the school board meetings and like 3 different meetings.
Yeah.
So I went and I found like this school board meeting. They were making like this small group of people were making like decisions for the whole like district of like how much more like their insurance was gonna go up, how much they were gonna pay, like, and whose doctors weren't gonna be on it.
And how do they know how everybody feels?
Yeah,
right?
and you know, and then I talked to my professor, and he's like, that's the thing. Every time I go to the council meetings, I see the same like 10 people, the same old 10 people at L&J Cafe. And that's why we get this, only what they want, but we don't even have like our own like representation.
I think they're always hyped up. Everyone hypes them up.
And like maybe the whole like race thing, I feel like
they're pretty good.
Like if you're not a good if you're not a good citizen, like you go like to the council meetings and everything, I feel like everybody has their fault because we did not speak up like for a long time. So like I'm gonna put that on me that I didn't stand up like long before. And
of course.
When I moved to Austin and they were like, oh, like I felt the racism there. I was like, well, it's kind of my fault because I didn't speak up like to my own council, and nobody does. So like it's like we just have to do something.
Especially here, and I think, like I said, I think it's changing with our generation. Like we're kind of becoming more woke, as silly as that sounds, more corny. But and that's what it's about: getting your problems heard or getting your people to represent you.
Yeah, and again, I think it's somewhat cultural too. As millennials, we never grew up with our parents or our grandparents or being engaged and like, oh no, you're gonna go listen to this city council meeting. You're gonna go and listen and understand that this is how decisions are made. And at the same time,
the school system doesn't teach it either.
And at the same time, am I willing to go and sit for 3 hours on a Wednesday night and listen to something as boring as a city council meeting? Probably not. If you offer it via Zoom, though, you girl's gonna watch it. It's a cultural thing too. It's all about growth for our society and change for our society.
Incorporating new technologies.
Incorporating technology, like adapting to the times.
That's true, but we have these old dudes like can't even open the computer doing this presentation.
A while ago.
And they're trying their best. They're trying.
Like a while ago, I don't mean to scare any of y'all, but we had one of our vehicles stolen and one of our clients' vehicles. We had it all on camera. One of the some guy.
Like in this parking lot where my bike's at.
You're right. We're all cameraed out now. No, but so these guys went into our shop and they took a bunch of keys and then they found the cars through and they took a few of the cars, and so right away we found out and we called the cops and we were doing doing an investigation. And so I told you I'd do a little bit of video editing. So I was able to, with Premiere Pro, you know, like slow stuff down, zoom into the face, try to like work with the quality as much as I could. And then
CSI.
I know, right? And then the detective comes in and we're talking, I'm explaining everything. And then I'm like telling him, I was like, all right, I can, you know, send you these files and whatnot for your investigation. And he's like, no, it's cool. I'll just, and then he brings out like a point and shoot camera and he's just recording my screen. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so bad quality. Like, I could just email them to you, dude. And be like, that's not a thing.
Like, here, it's this man.
A point and shoot?
Is this how you're running like every investigation? So yeah, it's like that's like a perfect summary of how probably that's running.
You bringing that up makes me realize how lazy, like how lazy some of us are. And when we could just put that extra effort and say, you know what, yeah, man, send me the email. Here's my email. I'll check that. But we're so accustomed. I'm gonna say I'm so accustomed. 'Cause I'm like, we are. Yeah, we're all in this. No, I'm so accustomed. Yeah, sometimes I do like above and beyond.
Right.
But sometimes my bare minimum gets it done.
Yeah.
Right.
So bare minimum.
That's what we like
for
to see.
everyone, for everything.
Yeah.
But I think you have to ask yourself, is it lazy? Am I lazy for getting out my point and click and shoot or whatever you call it camera? Or is it just out of my comfort bubble?
Yeah, like is there not even, have I not even...
I want to use the email and it's like, yeah, don't send me through email because I don't even know how to use my email.
Well, have I not even developed a system, you know, is there not even a system in place yet for like, you know, to, like maybe he doesn't even know how to open up a media player, like a normal,
Tim
regular...
Tim Kennedy has something good about that. He's an ex-UFC fighter, military.
I always hate him.
He had something to say about that. He was talking about how they should train our police officers better. Like,
yeah, of course. I think
do more.
I got so much to say on that.
Diligence and stuff.
I know that. I'm like, that almost seems like it's another podcast.
Yeah, I know.
We should have
you could go.
I say we like I've been here.
So far in the weeds.
It's 'cause this is
So far in the weeds.
This platform is so beautiful because the conversations are raw. They're emotional. They're the vibe, the energy that we provide here as well.
There's no schedule.
I mean, I'm not to toot my own horn, you know what I'm saying? But it allows for people to open up and really get their voice out and without judgment. You know, like of course if you don't agree with something, I'm gonna come out with you like, you know what, I don't agree, but we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna have a discussion instead of write out like everything you're saying I don't agree with. Deuces, take it out.
Uninvited.
Yeah, I think some of it is I think some of it is just stepping outside of our comfort zone. You know, we see that on a small scale, like pulling out our point. I cannot get that sentence right. Pulling out our
like
digital camera and not using email. We see that on a small scale. We see that on a big scale nationally right now about getting out of our comfort zone and accepting change and accepting, you know, updating and, you know, getting with the times, whether that be with technology or very antiquated ideals and systems. So is it lazy? Yeah, maybe. Like,
a little bit.
You know, there's this kind of ongoing joke in the military that, you know, oh, we're going to do it this way because that's the way we've always done it. And there are some very, in my opinion, dumb, redundant things that we still have to do a certain way because it's the way we've always done it. You know, and sometimes the good idea fairy sits on someone's shoulders and they say, we're going to try it this way. And so it takes a long time to change the system of how we operate in an organization like the Army. So imagine doing that on a national scale. Yeah, we could argue that some of it is lazy. Like, if there's a better way to do something, I, as a millennial, am probably going to be the one to speak up and be like, what? Yeah. Why? Why are you making me do this? And that's what we're seeing. That's what I'm seeing even as because as an officer, some of my junior soldiers and junior soldiers that I've interacted with, 18, 19, 20-year-olds fresh out of high school coming in and they're asking those questions. They're asking why. And they're listening and they're wanting to learn, but they're not so quick to say, oh, okay, I'll do this because it's the way you've always done it. So, we see that on small scale personally, and then we see it on such a large scale as well.
So it is we.
It's a we. It's we.
It's we. Sometimes we.
We're getting close to the end of this. I wanted to touch very quickly a little bit on. We talked a little bit about your graphic design and a little bit of the work you do. What are you doing right now for your nonprofit? Because we talked about what you did with animals previously. What does that focus on?
So where I work now is called a community foundation. It's hard for me to even explain.
Yeah, you were saying how it's like the middle person, right?
Yeah, so we're an umbrella organization, and we support different
What's the name of it?
nonprofits. It's the Community Foundation of Southern New Mexico. I'll give it a shout out.
All right.
We'll link everything up. We'll put all the links to all the nonprofits that you have, nonprofits. We'll put
it's amazing. This is my first time working at a foundation that supports other 501c3s. The work that we do is so important to keeping the doors open for some of these nonprofits who are doing boots on the ground work in our communities. It's not always the most, picture-worthy work. We're not boots on the ground. I'm not out playing with animals anymore. So it's harder to tell that story, but where we're able to tell the story is just to get with someone who's seen an impact in their life from the help that we were able to provide. And just have them share their story. So
and if someone's interested in finding more about that organization or any of the organizations that
so on our website there's over on the side it says working together, and there's a list of nonprofits. We actually support the endowments for 42 nonprofit organizations in 7 counties in southern New Mexico. So any of those organizations, there's a variety. We support animal welfare, we support domestic violence, homelessness, hunger, maternal and child welfare. So there's all of those, and then we have some of our own programmings and grants that we're operating currently and will continue doing. So, every day is different at the foundation. The past few months, we've been operating 5 COVID response funds. One is a statewide fund, but the other 4 were just at our organization. The one that you just pulled up, we granted $425,000 to individuals and families in southern New Mexico.
That's awesome.
Who needed support, who, maybe had not gotten a hold of the employment office yet. To
Took
get
a while
unemployment.
For a lot of people.
And something like that, it was difficult to hear their stories. It was gut-wrenching, and we knew we needed to help. So we're fortunate that some donors stepped in, and we worked with the city of Las Cruces to...
You work with big donors, or accept small donations as well?
Any size donation. Philanthropy and being a philanthropist isn't about the amount. It's about the heart. It's about the soul. So we have a fund currently called Thank You Las Cruces Restaurants, where people can donate money and nominate a restaurant, a local restaurant, to give food to needy families, to give a free meal to whoever needs it. So once we get a certain amount of money, we're able to call the restaurant that was nominated and say, hey, you've been nominated, can you do this? We'd love to give you a $1,000 check and help you feed people who need food.
Oh, that's awesome.
So any amount.
That's cool. Is there anything else that you would like to touch on any projects that you're doing, anything that you wanted to share that I wasn't able to ask, didn't get to ask?
Well, you were talking about how social media, like, because you used to model, so you were talking about you used to.
Oh yeah, we're trying to get these archive pics.
Yeah,
You're not seeing the archives. Yeah. So, and I'll do this really quick. I know you want to wrap up.
Dang. I know. Why are you trying to kick her out? Or what?
I know you.
We're staying. It's because you told me an hour and a half, and I was like,
no, I mean that's generally, but I mean we can stay.
I'm the new guy.
Yeah, I'm the new guy. I know you found me on social media.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, I feel so grateful to have met as many people as I have through social media connections, to have worked with as many people as I have, different companies that I was able to support. But I think for me, starting a public social media and sharing so much of my life over the years has actually made me more introverted.
Oh yeah.
Because everything was scrutinized.
You can tell the difference. I mean, not to like be critical or whatever the case, but you can tell the difference. Obviously you're a beautiful woman, and you can see the progression from where you're letting yourself out there and you're being a little bit more open, and then I guess you make the shift. You're like, you know what? I really don't want to be associated myself with this.
Yeah.
And then you start, posting, humanitarian stuff. You start posting a little bit more about
biker girl.
Your hobbies, your dog. It changed. Like it changed.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a shift there.
And you know what I see when I look at that? So that's what you see.
Definitely.
You know what I see as you're scrolling from 2016 to now is the change in myself.
Yeah.
I see someone who was very naive, but very strong-willed and very proud of herself. Going to someone who not in the best place mentally, like struggling and trying to hide that, to someone trying to be happy with who I am now, after all that I've experienced, after, digging deep in myself and going through some of my own healing. And
I love that hike.
that was the wrong hike to wear running shoes on. I'll just say that. So it's the Franklin Mountains.
Okay. Oh yeah.
So that's what I see. A lot of my photos on social media are archived now.
Yeah.
I actually deleted that page back in December and didn't know if I was even going to come back. Like I was done.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad you did.
Thank you. I'm glad I did too. And the reason I kept it, and I still struggle with I don't really want to post anything, but I still struggle with keeping it around. But the reason I did is because it brings me to what I hope is to be able to impact somebody positively.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope for this podcast is somebody will watch it and walk away from it knowing that maybe they're not so different.
Yeah.
That it's okay to have struggles, that, it'd be cool as hell if someone messaged me and be like, yo, I bought a Harley because I heard you talk about it.
There you go.
Like something like that. But that's why I keep it on the back end of that. When you have so many followers who think that they know you, because they think that they know me because we both wear a uniform.
Right.
Or they think that they know me because we lived in the same city at one point. The bullying that I have experienced on social media is nasty. And I'm not alone in that. I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
We're seeing it a lot right now. I don't know what cancel culture is, but I learned that it was a thing when I got a Twitter a few months ago.
Okay. I could never stay on Twitter.
So just doxing people and canceling them, the messages that I get.
Yeah. Angry.
For my own mental state, because I'm a very feely person, if you are into the Enneagrams, I'm a type 2 through and through, like very empathetic, very feely. For my own mental health and for my safety, my family's safety, I just stopped.
Yeah.
I had to take a step back and delete people and block so many people and just take a step back from sharing my life on social media. So for people who have way more followers than me, I can only imagine how difficult that can be sometimes.
It's kind of like a job. It becomes a job.
Yeah, well, it's my brand.
Yeah.
My brand is Jordan Lyndsey. Yeah. All of my social media handles are the same. They're all Jordan Lyndsey. You can hashtag Jordan Lyndsey. You can find me.
Right here.
David Chen has a good piece about that. He's all like, this is the 2020, like the nowadays resume. Your Instagram, your
it's who I
LinkedIn,
am.
like everything.
And when I interviewed for my job at the foundation, I had a meeting and I told my now boss, I said, I have a social media following. This is my brand on social media. This is what I bring to the table as a professional, and I will never cross the two. I've been, I used to, when I worked at the animal welfare organization at the Humane Society, I would share a lot of my job on my social media because it's puppies and it's kittens, and who doesn't love puppies and kittens? So I was always like, I would be the one to go on TV on Pet Tuesdays then, and I'd be like, this is Banjo, he's the dog, he's gonna be hanging out with me today. But that also led to things like stalking and unwelcomed,
What was the worst case of stalking?
So the worst case definitely was, I would get messages on my Instagram from like a fake account where, I can't trace it. They don't have followers. They don't have a picture. And it was clearly somebody who lived in the same gated apartment complex as I did. And they would be like, that was a nice red shirt you were wearing. I saw you at the mailbox today. And I'm like,
yeah.
So, and then I had somebody, and it was innocent. Like, I didn't feel unsafe at this point, but I did have somebody show up to my place of work one day, and someone from the front comes back and they're like, hey, there's a man here to see you. Did you have a meeting? And I'm like, no, but I was totally used to that. I thought nothing of it. So I walk out and the guy's like, hey, I'm so-and-so. Did you get my email? And I'm like, no, man, I didn't. Can I help you with something? He's like, no, check your Instagram. And I was like, oh. He was a truck driver driving through town at the time, and had sent me a message request on Instagram and just was like, hey, I just wanted to meet you. And I had to tell this man who I don't know, I would like to think he didn't have any foul intentions in what he did, but I had to tell him, like, all right, sir, unless you're here to talk about XYZ with my organization, you need to leave or I'm going to call the cops. So, word of my social media presence spread at that organization. So I was just upfront about it when I got here. Like, here's my Instagram. Yeah. It is public. You are welcome to look at it. Yeah. If I don't think any of that, anything that I post is, a bad representation of my employer in my civilian world, it's definitely fine with the Army as well. So it's just interesting. You know, I've dealt with stalking. I've dealt with like me being live on, I can't believe I didn't remember this before. I was live on Instagram, same gated apartment complex. I was live on Instagram with Harvey, my dog, when he was a puppy. Like I had him not very long. So he's little bitty, snorty, cute, and I was giving him a bath, and I just like turned on the Instagram live, and I was doing a little ask me anything or whatever while I watched Harvey. Of course, most people are wanting to watch because of the dog, right? Yeah. So I think I did that for like 15, 20 minutes. It was fine. I've never had like over the top engagement. You know, I have a group of people who continue to follow me and engage with me, and I'm very thankful for that. Like some of them have become very close friends. But I ended that live, and I got a knock on my door a few minutes later. And I didn't have a peephole in that apartment. But like, I knew nobody living there. So I like opened the door, and you know, I have my little foot like against the door. And I open it, I'm like, can I help you? And this man goes, you didn't answer my question. I would like to hear more about something. I forget what it was at this point. But he showed up at my door, and I was like, bro, there are like 21 buildings in this community. How did you find my room?
Jesus.
How did you find my building, my room? I was in the very back corner of this apartment, and I just remember closing the door, locking it, and then I got back on Instagram Live, and I was like, whoever you are that just came to my house, to my place where I'm supposed to feel safe.
This is my dojo.
Like, I'm calling the cops just to let them know what you looked like.
Jesus.
So
definitely 100%.
I mean, you know, after that, and then like I said, just some people are just nasty, not nice.
For sure.
I definitely took a step back. I love photography and I love modeling, and it's just something I do sometimes. I don't know. It's just fun for me. But I definitely took a step back from sharing that on social media.
Well, Jordan, we are more than delighted. We're so glad that you decided to keep going on your Instagram, because if not, we would have never met you.
Oh, yeah.
We would have never had you here.
Well, that's why I keep it. That's why I keep it, to meet amazing people like you.
Of Instagram, social media.
There is.
Yeah, so what would your advice be for anyone like, coming up in this world that is very much influenced by your presence online? Or it can be if you decide to, like you said, a lot of good things do come from, keeping a presence, or even focusing on and expanding your presence.
Well, I mean, gosh, it's hard to imagine someone my age or younger not having a social media presence at all, because that's how I stay connected with my family.
But to the degree that yours is like a brand almost, like you said. So
that's a tough question.
Yeah.
I would first say, like, if you choose to be public about your life and to have a brand and to brand yourself, it's important to also have boundaries.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where I messed up in the beginning, because I didn't have boundaries from social media to my job to here's what I'm doing on the weekends to here's all these cool people that I'm collaborating with. There were no boundaries. And so who I was showcased to the public was not how I felt at the end of the day.
Yeah.
When I was, sitting in bed.
Yeah. And you're easily accessible from what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So
apparently I was. Definitely not anymore. So it's just important to have boundaries, and it's important, I think, to be kind to yourself, because, Instagram is a highlight reel. The things that you see on my Instagram, my Twitter's more who I really am than my Instagram, because that's where I post all my like sarcastic memes, and that's where I'm like, well, my mom's not following my Twitter, right? so my language is awful, you know, like.
Beautiful.
So it's important to have boundaries. It's important to be real, but it's important to also be kind to yourself. You know, not every picture that you post is gonna get you 1,000 likes.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, none of them.
Likes don't mean shit. Can I say that?
Yeah, you can say that.
Likes don't mean shit.
Say whatever the fuck you want.
This is Texas.
It does not equate to your self-worth. And while, yes, there's so much good on the internet, there's so many people who don't know you and support you and want to know you and want to be engaged in your life, and it really is beautiful. I forget where I was going with this. There's also people who maybe we have a tendency to think that those relationships do hold weight, and they don't.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you know, I'm so thankful that you invited me here, and that I had a chance to come and meet you and talk to everybody. But if this would not have happened,
you'd be carrying on.
Our lives would go on.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, social media is definitely not reality. It's not the reality of me talking to my sister or me going home to my family at the end of the day. Yeah. You know, so it's important to have those boundaries. It's important to be kind to yourself. It's important to have fun.
Yeah.
Like,
don't take it too serious.
Social media and keeping up with my brand and who I am online, if it starts to feel like a chore, maybe you need to take a step back. Like, I think I'm at a point now where I'm like, you know, most of what you're gonna see is either my dog or my bike on my timeline. So that's fun for me. Yeah. If you don't like it, you don't have to look.
You have to follow, definitely.
But when I was doing modeling, when I was working with companies, when I was very engaged in like the veteran community, it felt like a chore. It felt like a job to keep up this image.
Yeah.
You're more connected emotionally to the result, as you were saying.
Exactly. Now, I kind of look at it as more of, that's just kind of my diary, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, you see highlight reels of my day and my life, and I have actively put it in my schedules, because I'm a scheduler.
Okay.
To do more and to engage more on social media, and to start coming back to that.
All the wiser.
Yeah, because there is good, and I think that I should keep going with this, because you never know who you're going to impact.
Yeah. Yep.
I know somebody who messaged me. I don't know their face. Yeah. I know their IG handle. And, you know, I've been very open about mental health on my timeline, and they messaged me multiple times and just needed an ear. And it was another military officer. They just needed someone to talk to. Yeah, let's talk. I don't know if this person is male, female, black, white. I don't know. I don't care. They reached out to me a few times. We talked. I gave them, you know, stories of my experience. I gave them an ear so that they could tell me their experience. And it was maybe 8 months later that they messaged me again and just said, hey, I just want you to know, like, I sought help, and I'm feeling better, and I'm doing better, and I just wanted to thank you for that. And man, I broke down crying. I was like, you know, if my Instagram wasn't there,
you were gonna help this one person.
You know, their life went on.
Yeah.
Because they just wanted somebody to talk to. I'm gonna cry again on your podcast.
That's 4.
Is it 4 or 5?
We'll keep pushing it.
So it is important, you know, if you've established a brand and put yourself out there, you can impact, you can make real change. It's just up to you as to what direction you want to go with that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. A smile goes a long way.
Yeah.
I smiled. I did a big old smile for a lady like driving. I was just like, and the lady smiled too. And I stayed thinking about her for like the next 5 minutes. I'm like, yeah, that felt good. So anything helps, especially right now. Yeah. Anything helps.
Yeah, I remember one time this guy like cut me off and it was right after school, so we were probably both students out, and I went to UT Austin, so it would get really congested, and I was like in a pissy mood, and I like flipped him off, and then he like looked at me and he like flipped me off back, and then I was like, this motherfucker. And then I don't know why I like started something came to mind, and I started doing little like I started flipping him off, but kind of like with a game, like I was doing like I don't have my other arm. I was like that, and then he did it, and then he was like, and by the end we were both like smiling at each other and like, all right, see you later, dog.
That's so funny. The trumpet one.
Yeah.
Kindness goes a long way.
Yeah.
And then
It's just, we're all human. We all feel stuff. We're all entitled more than anything to feel whatever emotion you want to feel. Like it's you. Like once again, it's your perspective. Like,
yeah,
that's so beautiful, Jordan. Like you bring such a beautiful light to everything. Keep going.
Yeah, we've
We
enjoyed.
love that you were here. Like honestly, if we wouldn't have had you here, like I don't know.
It's
a lot
nice.
of the things that I was thinking about, or
You thought I was just coming to talk about bicycles.
no, well,
Which I would have loved to.
I think it's hilarious. I mean, of course, knock on wood, I don't want it to happen to you, Jordan, but I mean, I think it's pretty funny.
What? These guys.
He's showing motorcycle fails. Oh my God. You know what? It is a matter of time. It will happen to me. I'm sure of it. It'll happen to me. I just,
As long as it's on a nice
hope
field
and
or
pray
something.
that I am safe and that everyone on the road is safe.
I rode for a long time, and I'm proudly a very wussy rider. Yeah, like I'll floor it here and there, but it's more like floor it. Well, anyway, you know what I mean.
I have a heavy wrist. I go fast.
I'm on the Shadow, a 750, but this was 2010. I was in high school.
Oh, the
Yeah.
I
Shadow.
didn't even have a license, but I was over here. Yeah.
You know, so I remember there was a point in time where I would get out of work late, and I would have to get on the freeway, and it was maybe like a few exits, maybe like 4 or 5 exits, and I'd be going like 80, 90 because there's no cars around. And it feels so scary. I'm just like, imagine. I'm thinking like the worst thoughts while I'm on my bike. I'm like, if this bike was not here, like it just disappeared, I would skid so far. And I'm just like thinking these things. Luckily, I never. You know when we dropped it, like that guy who tried to get on the truck.
Okay.
I tried to put it on my friend tried to put it on a truck, and he fell over. So.
Anything, Jessica? Any closing remarks you would like to say?
Closing remarks. It was wonderful listening to you. That's why I wish I talked more. But
It's your first one.
It's my first podcast.
We'll have to come back.
Yeah, there you go.
Of course.
And you're sitting in the middle next time.
Yeah,
Hey.
sure. Oh yeah, I have a story to tell. We all have stories. We're all.
Yeah.
And you made your story very interesting. I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved your story.
Very well told.
Very well told. Yeah, very well told.
All right.
So we will link everything, Jordan. We will link your Twitter, your Instagram. What else do you have?
Everything.
My website,
Your website?
Twitter, Instagram, website. I have a Snapchat, but like, don't Snapchat me. I don't use it. Don't Snapchat me.
You heard it.
You heard it, creepers.
It's mostly just Instagram, Twitter, and my website. Yeah, that's where I'm most active.
Perfect. There you go.
All right.
So
That's a
thank you
wrap.
so much for letting me be here and talk to you all. I so appreciate it.